Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Zenith's Grace, watching the stars drift past through the massive viewing windows. The cruise ship carried 50,000 passengers on their journey to see the beautiful outer colonies. Most of them were families on vacation, retired couples fulfilling lifelong dreams, and young people taking their first trip beyond Earth's solar system. The ship was huge, almost like a floating city. It had restaurants, shopping centers, parks with real trees, and even a small lake where children could swim. Elena had been captain of luxury ships for 15 years, but the Zenith's Grace was special. It was the newest and most beautiful ship in the human fleet. "Captain," called Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. "We're getting a strange signal." Elena walked over to look at the display. The signal was weak and kept breaking up. "What kind of signal?" "It looks like a distress call, but it's using really old protocols. The kind we stopped using 20 years ago." Torres frowned at his screen. "And it's coming from the Kepler 442 system." Elena knew that system. It was supposed to be empty space with no colonies or trade routes nearby. "Can you clean up the signal?" Torres worked on his controls for several minutes. Finally, the static cleared enough for them to hear the message. The voice was strange, not quite human, speaking in broken galactic standard language. "Please, anyone who hears this, we need help. We are the last of the Kythera. The coordinates are, please come before they return. We are dying." The bridge fell silent. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. She had never heard of the Kythera, but the desperation in that voice was real. "How far are we from those coordinates?" she asked. "About 6 hours if we change course now," answered Navigator Chen. Elena thought carefully. The Zenith's Grace was not a rescue ship. It was a luxury cruise liner with civilians aboard. Changing course would delay their schedule and make the company unhappy. But someone out there was asking for help. Her communicator buzzed. It was David Morrison, the company representative on board. "Captain, I hope you're not thinking of responding to that signal. We have a schedule to keep. Mr. Morrison, someone is in trouble out there. Captain, we don't even know if it's real. It could be pirates trying to trick us. Besides, we have 50,000 passengers who paid good money for this trip. We can't risk their safety or their vacation time for some random signal." Elena looked at the communication station where the distress call was still playing. The voice sounded so tired, so hopeless. She thought about her own family back on Earth. If they were in trouble, she would want someone to help them. "Mr. Morrison, I understand your concerns, but this is a distress call. Space law requires us to respond if we can help safely. Space law also says you need to protect your passengers first. Turn that signal over to the proper authorities and continue on course." Elena closed the communicator and looked at her crew. She could see they were waiting for her decision. Lieutenant Torres was young, maybe 25 years old. He had joined the crew because he wanted to see the galaxy and help people. Navigator Chen was older, with children of his own. Chief Engineer Rodriguez had been in space for 30 years and had seen everything. "What do you think?" Elena asked them. "The signal is real," Torres said quietly. "I can tell. Whoever sent it is really in trouble." Chen nodded. "The system is empty according to our charts. No known dangers. We could take a look and still make up the time." Rodriguez scratched his beard. "Captain, I've been in space a long time. I've seen what happens when good people don't help each other. Sometimes a distress call is all that stands between life and death." Elena made her decision. "Change course for the Kepler 442 system. Maximum safe speed." "Yes, Captain," Chen replied, his fingers already working on the navigation controls. Elena felt her communicator buzz again, but she ignored it. She knew Morrison would be angry, and the company would probably complain, but she could not ignore someone calling for help. As the ship changed direction, Elena announced to the passengers that they were making a small detour to assist another vessel. Most people understood. Some complained about the delay, but many were excited about the possibility of seeing a real space rescue. The hours passed slowly. The distress signal kept playing, but it was getting weaker. Elena worried they might be too late. Torres worked constantly to keep the signal clear, but it was fading fast. "Captain," Torres called out. "The signal just changed." Elena hurried over to listen. The voice was much weaker now, barely a whisper. "Please hurry. They killed everyone. So many worlds. Yours is next. 7 rotations. Tell them the hegemony comes." Then the signal went silent. Elena felt ice in her stomach. "Did he say the hegemony?" "I think so, Captain." but I've never heard of them. Neither had Elena. She ordered the computer to search all databases for any information about something called the hegemony. The search came back empty. "Captain," Navigator Chen called out. "We're approaching the coordinates now." Elena looked out the window and gasped. Instead of empty space, she saw debris floating everywhere. Huge pieces of metal and strange materials drifted in the darkness. But these were not pieces of ships. They looked like parts of buildings, maybe even pieces of planets. "My God," whispered Torres. "What happened here?" Elena ordered the ship to slow down and be careful. As they moved closer to the coordinates, the debris got thicker. The Zenith's grace used its lights to illuminate the area around them. What they saw made everyone on the bridge go quiet. Floating among the debris was what looked like the remains of a small ship. It was badly damaged with holes burned through its hull, but it was still sending out a weak power signature. "There," Elena pointed. "That's where the signal came from." She called down to the engineering department. "Rodriguez, can we bring that ship into our cargo bay?" "It's small enough, Captain, but I don't know if anyone could still be alive in there. We have to try." The next hour was tense. As the crew carefully moved the damaged ship into the Zenith's grace, Elena suited up and went down to the cargo bay with the medical team. They cut through the twisted metal of the small ship's airlock. Inside, they found him. The being was unlike anything Elena had ever seen. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. His large eyes were closed and he was barely breathing. Strange crystal formations grew from his arms and chest, but they were cracked and dim. "He's alive," the doctor said, "but just barely. I don't know how to treat his injuries. His biology is completely different from ours." Elena knelt beside the alien, his eyes opened slowly, focusing on her face. When he spoke, his voice was so weak she had to lean close to hear him. You came. I did not think anyone would hear." "We heard you," Elena said gently. "You're safe now. We're going to help you." The alien's eyes filled with something that looked like tears. "Too late for my people, but yours," warned them. "The hegemony comes for all who live. They take everything. Leave nothing." His eyes closed again, and the doctor quickly moved him to the medical bay. Elena stood in the cargo bay looking at the remains of the alien ship. Around them, debris from an entire civilization floated in the darkness. Someone had destroyed not just one world but many worlds, and according to the dying alien, Earth was next. She walked back to the bridge with heavy steps. Whatever the hegemony was, they were coming, and Elena had the terrible feeling that her decision to answer a simple distress call had just changed everything for humanity. Dr. Sarah Kim had treated injuries on dozens of different worlds, but nothing had prepared her for this. The alien lay on the medical table, his blue skin growing paler by the hour. The crystal formations on his body were cracked and dark like broken windows. "His name is Zethri," she told Captain Vasquez. "At least that's what the translation program thinks," he said. "His people were called the Kithera." Elena looked down at the dying being. Even unconscious, his face showed pain. "Can you save him?" "I'm trying everything I can, but his body is so different from ours. These crystals seem to be part of his nervous system. They're badly damaged, probably from radiation." Elena felt sick. Radiation from what? From whatever destroyed his world. The captain left the medical bay and returned to the bridge. Through the viewing window, she could see the debris field stretching in all directions. Her crew was using the ship's sensors to map the area and figure out what had happened here. "Report," she ordered. Navigator Chen looked up from his station, his face pale. "Captain, this isn't just one destroyed ship or even one destroyed city. According to our scans, this debris came from 11 different planets." 11 planets? Elena could not believe what she was hearing. "Yes, ma'am. The computer analyzed the materials and found 11 different types of rock and metal that match planetary cores. Someone destroyed 11 entire worlds," Lieutenant Torres spoke up from communications. "Captain, I've been analyzing the debris patterns. Whatever did this was systematic. The planets weren't destroyed by accident or by some natural disaster. They were deliberately broken apart." Elena sat down in her captain's chair. 11 worlds. Billions of people. "All dead. Keep scanning," she ordered. "I want to know everything about what happened here." Over the next several hours, the picture became clearer and more horrifying. The Kithera had been an advanced civilization that lived on crystal cities built into their planets. They were peaceful traders who had never hurt anyone. But someone had come to their system and systematically destroyed every world they lived on. The attack had been recent, maybe only a few months ago. The radiation signatures were still fresh. Whatever weapons had been used were powerful enough to crack planets like eggs. Elena was studying the sensor data when Dr. Kim called her back to the medical bay. "He's awake," the doctor said, "but he doesn't have much time left." Elena hurried to Zethri's bedside. The alien's large eyes were open, but they looked tired and sad. "Thank you for coming," he whispered through the translation device. "I did not think anyone would hear our call." "We heard you," Elena said. "Can you tell us what happened here?" Zethri's eyes closed for a moment, as if remembering was painful. "The hegemony came. They always come." "What is the hegemony?" "A group of species that believes only they deserve to live among the stars. They find worlds with life and destroy them. They take the resources and leave nothing behind." Elena felt cold. "How many worlds have they destroyed?" "Hundreds. Maybe thousands. They have been doing this for centuries. My people tried to fight, but we were not warriors. We built beautiful things and traded with other species. We never learned to kill." "Why did they target your people?" Zethri coughed, and Elena saw that his blood was silver. "We were next on their list. Every cycle they choose 12 systems to harvest. They come with their fleets and take everything. 12 systems every cycle? How often?" "Every few years. They are very efficient." Zethri's voice was getting weaker. "I was on a research station at the edge of our system when they came. I watched them break our worlds. I recorded everything. Do you have the recordings?" Zethri nodded toward a small crystal device on the table beside him. "Everything is there. The attack, their ships, their transmissions. I escaped in a small ship to warn others." Elena picked up the crystal device. It was warm to the touch and seemed to glow softly. "You said they choose 12 systems every cycle. Which systems are next?" Zethri looked directly into Elena's eyes. "Yours, the Sol system. Earth and her colonies. You are 13th on this cycle's list." Elena felt like ice water had been poured into her veins. "When?" "Soon, 7 rotations, maybe less. They sent scouts to your system months ago. They know about your ships, your defenses. They think you will surrender like most species do." "Surrender?" "Most civilizations give up when they see the hegemony fleet. They offer their populations as slaves in exchange for being allowed to live. The hegemony usually accepts. They need workers for their mining operations." Elena thought about Earth, about the 50 billion humans living there. She thought about the colonies, the children, the families. "What if we don't surrender?" Zethri looked surprised. "Then they destroy you completely, like they did to us. No one has ever successfully fought the hegemony. How big is their fleet? For a system like yours, they will send maybe 2,000 ships. They are very advanced. Their weapons can crack planets." Elena recorded everything Zethri told her. She asked about the hegemony's tactics, their technology, their weaknesses, but with each answer the situation looked more hopeless. "I am sorry," Zethri whispered. "I am sorry I could not warn you sooner. My people spent their last days trying to send warnings to other species, but no one listened. No one ever comes to help." "We came," Elena said firmly. Zethri smiled, and Elena realized it was the first time she had seen him look anything other than sad. "Yes, you came. Perhaps your species is different." "Tell me about the crystal," Elena said, holding up the recording device. "It contains everything. Battle recordings, technical scans of their ships, copies of their transmissions. If your people are warriors, they might find something useful." Elena wanted to tell him that humans were not warriors either. They were explorers, traders, scientists, like the Cathara had been, but something in Zethri's words made her think. What did the hegemony say about humans in their transmissions? "They called you soft mammals from a garden world. They think you will be easy to conquer because your planet is so peaceful and comfortable." Elena almost laughed. But there was nothing funny about the situation. Earth was many things, but peaceful and comfortable was not how she would describe it. Humans had evolved on a world with ice ages, supervolcanoes, massive storms, and predators that could kill with a single bite. They had survived by being smart, tough, and absolutely refusing to give up. They don't know much about Earth, do they? They know you have no military alliances with other species. They know your ships are designed for exploration and trade, not war. They think you are weak. Zethri's breathing was becoming more labored. Dr. Kim checked his vital signs and shook her head sadly. "Is there anything else?" Elena asked gently. "Tell your people. Tell them the last Cathara died hoping someone would finally stop the hegemony. Tell them 11 worlds cry out for justice." Zethri closed his eyes for the final time. The crystals on his body went completely dark. Elena stood by his bedside for a long moment, holding the crystal recording device. Then she walked to the bridge and called her senior officers together. "Get me a priority channel to Earth Command," she ordered Torres. "Maximum encryption." "Yes, Captain." "What should I tell them the message is about?" Elena looked out at the debris field where 11 worlds floated as broken pieces. She thought about Zetri's words, about the hegemony fleet that was coming to destroy Earth. Tell them it's about war. As the communication link connected, Elena began composing the message that would change human history. She would tell Earth Command about the hegemony, about the threat coming in 7 days, about the recording that showed how to identify their ships. But first, she would tell them about Zethri and his people, about a civilization that had created beautiful crystal cities and traded peacefully with their neighbors, about how they had died calling for help that never came. Until now. Elena looked down at the crystal device in her hands. It felt warm, almost alive. Inside, it was everything humanity needed to know about their enemy. The only question was whether 7 days would be enough time to prepare for war. Admiral Marcus Webb stood in the Situation Room deep beneath Earth Command, staring at the holographic display that showed the recorded destruction of the Cathera worlds. The images were horrifying. Massive ships, each one the size of a city, firing beams of energy that cracked planets like eggshells. "How long ago did we receive Captain Vasquez's transmission?" he asked. 18 hours, sir," replied Colonel Hayes. "We've verified the authenticity of the recordings. This Cathera crystal technology is unlike anything we've seen, but our scientists confirm the data is real." Webb watched the replay again. 11 civilized worlds, reduced to floating debris in a matter of days. According to the recordings, similar attacks had happened hundreds of times across the galaxy. "What's our current defense status?" "Sir, we have the home fleet stationed around Earth. About 400 ships, mostly patrol vessels and system defense platforms. The Colonial Defense Forces have maybe another 600 ships spread across 47 systems." Webb did the math in his head. 1,000 human ships against 2,000 hegemony vessels that could destroy planets. The numbers were not good. "Sir," Colonel Hayes continued, "there's something else. We've detected ships moving toward our system. Long-range sensors picked them up 6 hours ago. Hegemony scouts? We think so. They match the energy signatures from Captain Vasquez's recordings." Webb felt a familiar calm settle over him. He had been a soldier for 30 years, fighting pirates and handling colonial disputes. But this was different. This was a threat to humanity's very existence. Send the recall order. Every human ship, every colonial defense vessel, every patrol boat. I want them all headed for the Sol system immediately. Sir, that will leave the colonies completely undefended. Colonel, if we lose Earth, the colonies won't matter. The hegemony will pick them off one by one. Webb turned to face his staff. "How fast can we get our ships here?" "Most of the colonial fleets can reach Sol in 72 hours if they push their engines." "But sir, many of those ships are cargo vessels, passenger liners, mining ships. They're not warships. Then we'll make them into warships." "What about civilian vessels?" Colonel Hayes looked confused. "Sir, how many civilian ships do we have in human space? Cargo haulers, passenger liners, research vessels, private yachts, anything that can mount a weapon or ram another ship." Hayes consulted his datapad. "Approximately 50,000 registered civilian vessels, sir. But most of them have no military capabilities. They will." Webb activated the main communication system. "Get me every shipyard, every engineering facility, every weapons manufacturer in human space. And get me the president." Over the next hour, Webb laid out the situation to Earth's leadership. The president listened in shocked silence as Webb explained about the hegemony, the destroyed worlds, and the fleet that was coming to end human civilization. "How long do we have?" the president asked. "Maybe 5 days, sir. Possibly less." "What are our chances with conventional defenses?" Webb was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, sir, almost zero. The hegemony has technology we can't match and numbers we can't beat. Then what do you suggest?" "We do what humans have always done when faced with impossible odds. We improvise, we adapt, and we refuse to quit." The president nodded slowly. "What do you need?" "Everything, sir. Every ship, every weapon, every person who can help. And I need you to authorize me to do whatever it takes to defend humanity." Within 6 hours, the largest emergency mobilization in human history was underway. Every military vessel in human space received orders to head for Earth at maximum speed. Civilian ships were commandeered and rushed to orbital shipyards where teams of engineers worked around the clock to mount weapons on anything that could fly. Cargo. Ships got missile launchers bolted to their hulls. Passenger liners had their luxury cabins stripped out and replaced with armor plating. Mining vessels kept their drilling equipment and added torpedo tubes. Even small personal spacecraft were fitted with whatever weapons could be found. The Zenith's Grace became the unofficial flagship of this improvised fleet. Captain Vasquez found herself coordinating with ships from across human space as they arrived in the Sol system. Her bridge became a command center where former cruise ship officers worked alongside military personnel to plan humanity's defense. "Captain," Lieutenant Torres called out, "we're getting reports from ships arriving from the outer colonies. The hegemony scouts have been spotted in 17 different systems. They're mapping our defenses," Vasquez realized, just like Zethri said they would. Chief Engineer Rodriguez had been working non-stop to convert the Zenith's Grace from a luxury liner into a warship. "Captain, we've got the forward observation deck converted to a weapons platform. It's not pretty, but those mining lasers pack a punch." Elena looked around her bridge. 3 days ago, these people had been running a peaceful cruise ship. Now they were preparing for war against an enemy that had conquered the galaxy. "Status report on the fleet," she ordered. Torres consulted his screens. "We've got about 8,000 ships in system now, with more arriving every hour. Admiral Webb's staff estimates we'll have maybe 12,000 vessels when the hegemony arrives." "What kind of ships?" "Everything, Captain. Military vessels, cargo haulers, research ships, colony transports. There's even a group of racing yachts that got fitted with torpedo launchers." Elena shook her head in amazement. In 3 days, humanity had assembled the largest fleet in their history. It was chaotic, unorganized, and completely desperate, but it was also something the galaxy had never seen before. "Captain," Navigator Chen called out, "we're getting a transmission from Admiral Webb. He wants to speak with you personally." Admiral Webb's face appeared on the main screen. He looked tired but determined. "Captain Vasquez, I want to thank you for what you've done. If you hadn't answered that distress call, the hegemony would have caught us completely by surprise." "Admiral, what's our battle plan?" "That's what I'm calling about. According to the Cathara recordings, the hegemony always starts their attacks the same way. They arrive at the edge of a system and broadcast a surrender demand. Most species give up at that point. What if we don't surrender? Then they move in and start destroying our defensive positions. They expect organized resistance from military targets. What they don't expect is what we're planning to give them." Elena waited for him to continue. "Captain, your ship is going to be our primary communications hub. When the hegemony arrives, I want you to coordinate the civilian fleet. Every cargo ship, every passenger liner, every converted mining vessel is going to be under your command." "Sir, I'm not a military officer." "No, you're something better. You're the person who proved that humans don't abandon each other. When that alien called for help, you answered. Now I'm asking you to do the same thing for humanity." Elena looked around her bridge at her crew. Torres was 25 and had never been in a fight in his life. Chen had a wife and 2 children back on Mars. Rodriguez was old enough to retire but had volunteered to stay and help convert civilian ships. "What exactly are you asking us to do, Admiral?" Webb smiled grimly. "The hegemony thinks they're dealing with a typical spacefaring civilization. They expect us to fight like everyone else does. Organized military formations, predictable tactics, surrender when the odds get bad. And we're not going to do that. Captain, humans evolved on a death world. We're persistence hunters who survived ice ages and supervolcanoes. We don't fight fair, we don't give up, and we sure as hell don't surrender to bullies." Elena felt something stir in her chest. It was the same feeling she had gotten when she heard Zethri's distress call, the feeling that said some things were worth fighting for no matter the odds. "What's the plan, Admiral?" "When the hegemony fleet arrives, they're going to see what looks like a standard defensive formation. Our military ships will be arranged in predictable patterns around Earth and the inner planets. They'll think they know what to expect." Webb's expression turned fierce. "What they won't see coming is 8,000 civilian ships hidden behind asteroids inside the asteroid belt and scattered throughout the outer system. When they commit their forces to attack our main fleet, every cargo hauler, passenger liner, and mining ship is going to hit them from every direction at once." Elena began to understand. "We're going to swarm them." "Exactly. The hegemony has never faced an enemy that turned their entire civilian population into warriors. They don't know how to fight an enemy that uses cruise ships as battleships and mining equipment as weapons. Torres spoke up from his station. Captain, long-range sensors are picking up something at the edge of the system. Elena felt her heart skip. What is it? Multiple contacts, big ones. Heading this way at high speed. Admiral Webb's voice came through the speakers. All ships, this is Admiral Webb. The hegemony fleet has arrived. Time to show them what happens when you threaten a species from a death world. Elena looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, an alien fleet was approaching Earth with the intention of destroying every human alive. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and wiped out entire civilizations, but they had never faced humanity before. All civilian vessels, Elena broadcast on the fleet frequency. This is Captain Vasquez aboard the Zenith's Grace. Remember why we're here. Remember Zethri and his people. High Commander Vextha stood on the bridge of the hegemony flagship Eternal Dominion, watching the primitive system ahead of them. His fleet of 2,000 vessels moved in perfect formation toward the third planet, where the soft mammals called humans lived. Report, he ordered in the clicking language of his species. The system contains one inhabited world and several small colonies, replied his tactical officer. Their defensive fleet appears to number approximately 1,000 vessels, mostly light patrol craft. Vextha's 4 eyes studied the tactical display. This would be even easier than he had expected. Most species could field at least 2,000 ships for their home system defense. These humans seemed pathetically weak. Any response to our arrival? No surrender broadcast yet, Commander. But that is normal. Most species take time to accept their fate. Vextha had conquered 47 systems in his career. He knew how this would go. First, the defenders would try to negotiate. Then they would realize how hopeless their situation was and offer to surrender in exchange for favorable treatment. Finally, they would provide their populations as workers for the hegemony's mining operations. It was efficient and predictable. The hegemony had perfected this process over centuries. Open a channel to the human fleet, he ordered. On the bridge of the Zenith's Grace, Captain Vasquez watched as the hegemony fleet appeared on her sensors. The alien ships were massive, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their formation was perfect, disciplined, and absolutely terrifying. Incoming transmission. Captain, Torres reported. Put it on screen. The alien that appeared was unlike anything Elena had ever imagined. It stood on 4 legs with a long neck and 4 eyes arranged around its head. When it spoke, the translation system made its voice sound cold and mechanical. Attention, humans of the Sol system. I am High Commander Vextha of the Hegemony. Your system has been selected for resource extraction. You have 1 rotation to consider our terms. Elena felt her hands clench into fists, but she kept her voice steady. What terms? Surrender your military forces. Provide 70% of your population for labor assignments. Restrict the remaining population to designated areas. In exchange, you will be allowed to continue existing under hegemony protection. The bridge fell silent. Helena thought about the crystal recordings about 11 destroyed worlds, about Zethri dying alone in space. And if we refuse, the alien's expression did not change. Then we will demonstrate why resistance is futile. You have 1 rotation to decide. The transmission ended. Elena activated the fleet communication system. All ships, this is Vasquez. You all heard their offer. Comments? The responses came flooding in from across the human fleet. Military captains, civilian ship commanders, cargo haulers, and passenger liner crews all had the same basic message. It was not fit for broadcast, but the meaning was clear. Admiral Webb's voice cut through the chatter. All vessels maintain communication silence and stick to the plan. Civilian fleet, move to your assigned positions. Military units, prepare for standard defensive maneuvers. Elena watched her tactical display as thousands of human ships began moving throughout the solar system. To the hegemony, it would look like the military vessels were forming defensive lines around Earth while the civilian ships fled to the outer system. In reality, 8,000 converted civilian vessels were positioning themselves for the largest surprise attack in human history. Torres, what's our status? All civilian ships report ready, Captain. The Harmony of Stars cruise liner is hiding behind Europa with a full load of missiles. The cargo ship Heavy Lifter is tucked into the asteroid belt with mining charges armed. Even the racing yacht Solar Wind is in position with torpedo launchers. Elena smiled grimly. In 3 days, Humanity had turned an entire civilian fleet into warriors. Cargo ships carried nuclear weapons. Passenger liners had been stripped down and armored. Mining vessels kept their industrial equipment and added military weapons. "Captain," Chen called out, "the hegemony fleet is moving. They're heading straight for Admiral Webb's defensive line." On the hegemony flagship, High Commander Vextha watched the human response with satisfaction. The military vessels were arranging themselves in a predictable defensive formation around their homeworld. The civilian ships appeared to be fleeing toward the outer system. "Typical pattern," his tactical officer reported. "The military will make a brief stand to show courage, then surrender when they realize the situation is hopeless. Time until we reach weapons range." 2-time units, Commander. Vextha settled back in his command chair. This conquest would be finished before the sleep cycle. Then his fleet could move on to the next system on their list. "Sir?" The tactical officer suddenly called out, "I'm detecting some unusual energy signatures from the outer system." "Explain." "The fleeing civilian vessels appear to be charging weapon systems." Vextha's 4 eyes focused on the display. "Impossible. These are cargo ships and passenger vessels. They cannot possibly have military-grade weapons, sir. I'm reading fusion reactors, missile systems, and what appears to be industrial mining equipment modified for combat use." For the first time in his career, Vextha felt uncertain. In 47 conquests, he had never seen civilians arm themselves for battle. Most species tried to protect their non-combatants, not turn them into soldiers. "Continue the attack," he ordered. "A few improvised weapons cannot threaten our fleet." The first exchange of fire began when the hegemony fleet reached the outer edge of human defensive positions. Admiral Webb's military vessels opened fire with everything they had, filling space with missiles and energy beams. The hegemony ships responded with devastating precision. Their advanced weapons tore through human military vessels like they were made of paper. Within minutes, dozens of human ships were destroyed or crippled. As expected, Vextha observed, their military technology is primitive. But then something happened that had never occurred in any previous hegemony conquest. "Sir," the tactical officer called out in alarm. "Massive energy spike from the 3rd planet. On Earth, Admiral Webb activated the signal that humanity had been waiting for. All civilian vessels," he broadcast. "This is Admiral Webb. Execute Phoenix Protocol." Repeat, execute Phoenix Protocol. Across the solar system, 8,000 civilian ships stopped hiding and revealed their true nature. The cargo ship Heavy Lifter emerged from the asteroid belt and fired a full spread of mining charges at the nearest hegemony vessel. The industrial explosives, designed to crack apart asteroids, punched through the alien ship's shields and tore massive holes in its hull. The cruise liner Harmony of Stars dropped its camouflage behind Europa and launched 200 missiles at once. Each missile had been built in civilian factories and loaded with warheads designed for asteroid mining. Racing yachts, their engines modified for impossible speeds, swarmed around hegemony ships like angry insects, firing torpedoes and ramming damaged vessels. Passenger liners, stripped of everything except armor and weapons, charged straight into the enemy formation, trading their lives to bring down ships 10 times their size. "What is this?" Vextha demanded as his formation came under attack from every direction. "Where did these vessels come from?" "Sir, they were hiding throughout the system. Every asteroid, every moon, every piece of debris had human ships concealed behind it." The tactical display showed the true scope of what was happening. The hegemony fleet was surrounded by thousands of human vessels, all firing everything they had. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos. Elena watched from the Zenith's grace as her improvised fleet tore into the enemy. "Torres, damage report." "The hegemony is taking heavy losses, Captain." "They're not prepared for this kind of attack. Their formation is breaking apart." "What about our ships?" Torres' voice was grim. "We're losing vessels every minute, Captain. But for every ship we lose, we're taking down 2 or 3 of theirs." Elena saw a passenger liner ram itself into a hegemony cruiser, destroying both ships in a massive explosion. The liner had been carrying families on vacation just a week ago. Now it was a weapon wielded by people who refused to surrender their children to alien slavers. "Captain," Chen called out, "the Solar Wind reports they've disabled a hegemony command ship. They're requesting permission to board." Elena almost laughed. A racing yacht was asking permission to board an alien warship. "Tell them to be careful." The battle raged for hours. Human ships died by the dozens, but they kept coming. For every vessel the hegemony destroyed, 2 more appeared from hidden positions. Cargo haulers charged enemy battleships. Mining vessels used their drilling equipment to tear apart alien hulls. Even small personal spacecraft joined the attack, their owners refusing to run while others fought. High Commander Vexitha watched his perfect fleet fall apart around him. Half his ships were destroyed or crippled. The humans fought with a ferocity he had never encountered. They used tactics that made no sense, weapons that should not exist, and a level of coordination that was impossible for civilians to achieve. "Sir, we need to retreat," his tactical officer pleaded. "We're taking too much damage." "Impossible," Vexitha snapped. "The hegemony does not retreat from primitive mammals." But even as he spoke, another of his battleships exploded under the concentrated fire of a dozen human cargo vessels. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the memorial garden aboard the Zenith's Grace. The ship had been permanently converted from a luxury cruise liner into a hospital vessel, traveling between star systems to help refugees from worlds the hegemony had attacked. In the center of the garden stood a simple crystal monument. The inscription read, "For Zethri of the Kithra, whose final message saved 2 galaxies. The last of his people rests knowing that genocide will never again go unanswered." "Captain," Dr. Kim called from the entrance to the garden, "we're receiving another transmission." Elena walked to the bridge where Lieutenant Torres was working at his communication station. The bridge looked different now. Where there had once been luxury fittings, there were now medical monitoring stations and refugee coordination centers. "What kind of transmission?" Elena asked. "It's from the Vexili system, about 40 light-years from here. They're reporting hegemony attacks on 3 of their colonies." Elena felt the familiar anger rise in her chest. Even after their devastating defeat at Sol, scattered hegemony forces continued their campaign of destruction across the galaxy. "How long until we can get there?" 2 days at maximum speed, Captain. But we're not going alone." Torres activated the main display, showing a tactical map of nearby space. Elena smiled as she saw the cluster of ships moving toward their position. The Earth Defense Force cruiser Defiance, the converted cargo vessel Persistence, and the colonial fast attack ship Remember Kithara, Torres reported. "Admiral Webb is also dispatching the 3rd humanitarian fleet from Earth." Elena nodded. This had become the new normal for humanity. Any distress call, any report of hegemony activity, any species asking for help would receive the same response that Zethri had gotten 6 months ago. Humans came running. "Set course for the Vexili system," Elena ordered, "and send a message to the refugees in the cargo bays. Tell them we're going to help their neighbors." As the Zenith's Grace entered hyperspace, Elena thought about how much had changed since that day when they first heard Zethri's distress call. The Battle of Sol had lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the hegemony had lost over 1,500 ships. High Commander Vextha's flagship had been boarded by a team of human marines led by the crew of a racing yacht. The few surviving hegemony vessels had fled in panic, broadcasting warnings about the Deathworld species that fought with impossible fury. But the real victory had come in the days that followed. Word of humanity's triumph spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. For the first time in centuries, a species had not only defeated a hegemony fleet, but had done so while protecting refugees and evacuating civilians. More importantly, humanity had proven that the hegemony was not invincible. Within weeks, distress calls began arriving from across the galaxy. Species that had been hiding from the hegemony for generations suddenly found the courage to ask for help. Worlds that had been conquered decades ago sent secret messages asking if the humans would really come to liberate them. Elena remembered the first time they had answered one of those calls. The Zephyrians had been enslaved by the hegemony for 20 years, forced to mine rare crystals on their own homeworld. When the human fleet arrived, the hegemony garrison had expected an easy victory against what they thought was just another primitive species. Instead, they found themselves facing converted cargo ships with mining lasers, passenger liners armed with fusion warheads, and human crews who treated every enslaved alien as family worth dying for. The garrison lasted 6 hours. "Captain," Navigator Chen called out, interrupting her thoughts. "We're receiving a transmission from Earth Command." Elena walked over to Chen's station. The navigator had been promoted to communications director for the humanitarian fleet, but he had chosen to stay aboard the Zenith's Grace. "What does Admiral Webb want?" It's not the Admiral, Captain. It's the President, Elena felt surprised. The President of Earth rarely communicated directly with individual ship captains. Put her through. President Martinez appeared on the main screen. She looked tired but determined, much like everyone else involved in humanity's new role as galactic protectors. Captain Vasquez, I wanted to speak with you personally about the situation in the Vexili system. Yes, Madam President. We're en route now. Good, but there's something else. Our long-range sensors have detected a massive hegemony fleet massing in the Andromeda Spiral. Intelligence estimates it at over 5,000 ships. Elena felt cold. The largest hegemony force they had faced so far was the fleet at Sol. 5,000 ships was an armada capable of conquering entire sectors. Do we know their target? We believe they're planning a coordinated strike against the Terran Commonwealth and our allied species. They want to crush the rebellion before it spreads any further. Elena thought about the dozens of species that had joined, what the galaxy now called the Deathworlder. Alliance, refugees who had become warriors, enslaved populations who had found freedom, peaceful traders who had learned to fight alongside humans. What are our orders, Madam President? President Martinez smiled grimly. Captain, 6 months ago you answered a distress call from a dying alien. That decision changed the course of galactic history. Now I'm asking you to do something even bigger. What do you need? I need you to send a message to every species in the galaxy. Every world, every colony, every ship. Tell them that the hegemony is massing for one final attack. Tell them that humanity is calling for allies. Elena understood. You want to turn this into a galactic war? No, Captain. I want to turn this into a galactic liberation. For centuries, the hegemony has ruled through fear. They've convinced everyone that resistance is impossible, but you proved that wrong when you refused to ignore a cry for help. The President paused, looking directly into Elena's eyes through the communication link. The galaxy is full of species who have lost their homeworlds, their families, their freedom to the hegemony. They're waiting for someone to give them hope, someone to show them that the hegemony can be beaten. Elena looked around her bridge at the crew who had followed her from a luxury cruise to the front lines of a galactic war. Torres, who had grown from a young communications officer into a coordinator for refugee fleets. Chen, who had traded his navigator's charts for tactical displays showing liberated worlds. Chief Engineer Rodriguez, who now designed weapons for species whose names he could barely pronounce. Madam President, what exactly are you asking me to do? I'm asking you to do what you do best, Captain. Answer the call when someone needs help. This time, it's an entire galaxy that needs help. Elena thought about Zethri, about his final words, about the memorial crystal in her garden. He had died hoping someone would finally stop the hegemony. Thanks to his warning, humanity had become that someone. We'll send the message, Madam President. But I have one condition. What's that? When we meet this hegemony armada, I want every species we've helped to know they're fighting alongside the ship that first heard Zethri's call for help. President Martinez nodded. The Zenith's Grace will be the flagship of the Allied fleet, Captain. You earned that honor 6 months ago. After the transmission ended, Elena walked back to the memorial garden. She stood before Zethri's crystal monument and spoke quietly to the memory of the alien who had changed everything. Your people called for help, and we answered. Now the galaxy is calling, and we're going to answer that too. You saved us all, Zethri. I hope wherever you are, you know that. The crystal seemed to pulse with a soft inner light, as if somehow across space and time, the last Cathara was smiling. Elena returned to the bridge and activated the ship's communication array. In a few moments, her voice would reach every inhabited world in the galaxy. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the human vessel Zenith's Grace, speaking for the Terran Commonwealth and all free species. 6 months ago, we received a distress call from a dying civilization. We answered that call, and it led us to discover a threat that has terrorized the galaxy for centuries. She paused, thinking about all the species they had helped, all the worlds they had liberated, all the families they had reunited. The hegemony believes that fear makes them strong. They think that because they have conquered before, they will always conquer. They are wrong. Today, we call upon every free species in the galaxy to join us in ending their reign of terror forever. Elena looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them, alien families were listening to her words and daring to hope. To all who have lost their homes, we will help you rebuild. To all who have lost their freedom, we will help you fight. To all who have lost their loved ones, we will make sure their sacrifice was not in vain. She thought one more time about the crystal monument in her garden, about a dying alien who had used his last breath to warn them. This is humanity's promise to the galaxy. No one fights alone. No one dies alone. No one calls for help without an answer. Elena closed the communication link and ordered the ship to maximum speed toward the Vexili system, where people needed help. Behind them, the message spread across the galaxy at the speed of light, reaching worlds that had given up hope, species that had forgotten how to fight, and countless beings who had thought they would never be free. And on each of those worlds, the response was the same.